Welcome back to another episode of Cactus Quest. I'm your host Hunter, and in today's episode, we're back in the greenhouse. In the last episode, I showed you one of my favorite copiapoas, that beautiful glaucous white, just chalky columna alba, that beautiful Chilean beast. I'm going to show you another one of my favorite plants, and where these are going to differ is the plant that I'm going to show you today is not from Chile. It's actually a Mexican species of cactus, and I've seen this plant in habitat. So I wanted to kind of talk about, before I show you the plant, like as I've gone through and been to so many different collections, backyard growers, actual nurserymen, real retail nurseries, wholesale nurseries, one of the things that I have learned by comparing that to my experience going out into the field is that we get so used to seeing a species, right? So let's just take the plant I'm going to show you today is Mammillaria talachii. One of the interesting things about this plant, and this applies to many cactus and succulents that we all know and love, I'm accustomed to, I think this is what this plant looks like. I know what the morphology of the plant is. If I see one in somebody's collection, I can say, hey, that looks just like the, talachii that I have. However, you'll take a look at some of these photos that I took in the field in Oaxaca and in various different localities, in fact, and you'll notice that, in fact, some of the characteristics that we may normally ascribe to a different plant like today, in my mind, the way I had always thought about it is that it's a white-spined, pectinate white-spined Mammillaria, no centrals, nothing like that. You have Huitzilopochtli, which is also related to talachii and Crucidra. That one is known to have black central spines, and aside from that, they look very similar. There's some other slight morphological characteristics that are certainly different, but at a glance. And then you have Crucidra, which has no central spines ever, and in fact has a pretty distinct cross-hatch spine that is layered on top of the radials. The Crucidra will dichotomize and clump over time. Huitzilopochtli generally tends to stay solitary, and Crucidra seems to,
First, it seemed like I made a mistake.
talachii seems to be a little all over the map. So when I was in habitat, and even afterwards in the video that I put out of my Oaxaca trip, I was certain that certain plants I was looking at and photographing and sharing with you guys were actually Mammillaria Huitzilopochtli, when in fact, no, it's Mammillaria talachii.
So you can see here, this is kind of what you would normally think of as talachii, but as we get into some of these canyons, you start to see plants that have these central spines, which in my mind, that's what I thought of as Huitzilopochtli. However, after discussing with a couple of friends that actually live in Mexico, this is indeed Mammillaria talachii, and they do have central spines as well. So, kind of getting back to the point I was making earlier, is that we get so accustomed to seeing these plants in cultivation, which really what we're seeing is like inbred clone selections.
Clones maintaining a charade.
So everything is predominantly done clonally.
Your clones are very impressive.
So we get accustomed to seeing something that everyone's looks the same way because it either has the same parents at one of the several wholesale cactus nurseries in the US, or it is actually a tissue culture plant. Not so much with cactus, but with a lot of other succulents that would apply.
Really trying to understand what a species is. So I'm going to show you some of these right now. I'm going to say this is one of my favorite plants, and sure, this actual plant that I'm showing you is one of my favorites out of much. It's just the biggest one, but it's really the species. And so I'm growing these from seed. I've got seedlings that are actually from this plant and some of the other younger ones that I have. This is Mammillaria Crucidra subspecies talachii, and this grows in Oaxaca. It's got the pectinate spines. This one is a bit older. It's already clumping out. Just comparatively smaller ones, so I can hold them both up, right? You have Mammillaria talachii, and then you have Mammillaria Huitzilopochtli. Now this is a pretty exceptional clone. They don't all always have the black spines quite like this, but as you'll see in some of the photographs, In habitat, you have Mammillaria tilakii that'll actually have the central spines as well. What I thought the species had changed the minute I was looking at these plants in the wild, which seems to kind of be the case every single time. Now, there was one particular locality where we saw these plants growing, and it was at a site where we were actually going to look at a population of agave oteroi. Just so happens that intermingling and cohabitating with the oteroi, you've got beautiful clumps of Mammillaria tilakii that really look just like this. And they were pretty abundant where they were growing, which was not everywhere, but where they were occurring they were occurring in very dense populations, lots of seedlings, which was actually really nice to see. It presented me actually with a little bit of a moral quandary. Obviously, you know, I grow plants from seed. A lot of these things are endangered, especially with the warming of the climate. It's just, you know, expansion of human you know, cities and just tearing up the land. I mean, these things are all being threatened. While I was hiking around at this spot, a lot of the places where we were going to get along the hillside were actually these little goat trails. I mean, very, very thin, and it's super steep. So it was very difficult to even maneuver to like switch cameras or get anything out of my bag. Along that goat trail, there was a number of, I mean, probably throughout the day, I probably saw at least a dozen of the plants that had been apparently knocked out of the soil, I'm assuming by the goats that are passing by, and they're just lying there, bare rooted on top of the dirt. Now, ethically, I felt like the right thing to do would have been to bring them back, be able to use them to make seed, and obviously that's not legal. So I opted to just leave the plants there, but it's something that I thought about a lot over the entirety of that whole trip, knowing that pretty much, like I replanted a couple of them, but at a certain point it's like, okay, I can't stop every single like, you know, meter or so and replant these bare-rooted plants. I don't know, and just because of how tight the road was, the pathway rather. So it was really, really difficult. It was difficult to just leave them there because I kind of imagined that maybe some of them might have been able to reroute where they were, but for the vast majority of them, they were just gonna die. I keep finding these things like exactly like this. See what I mean? Roots still go into the ground. That's crazy. I've thought about conservation quite a bit, and it's just, there are just some challenges that seem to be really hard to surmount. You know, even if you had like some sort of a organization or a body that was going to be in charge of managing any kind of projects that would disrupt the plants and was able to somehow get them to the, you know, the right kind of horticulturalists or botanists or whatever it is, you can think up a system that sounds good, but the minute you start thinking about it actually operating, money's going to get involved and somebody's going to start greasing the pockets, and it's just going to get corrupted like pretty much everything. And so it's a difficult, you know, I've kind of pulled back from talking about conservation on the channel actually because I kind of get the sense that I'm yelling into a hurricane, and it's just like, you know, like shoveling sand to stop the tide. I sadly just think it's not going to stop. And so for me, I know what I'm comfortable with, and I'm you know, I'm not going to take plants, and I'm not going to support people that take plants out of the wild. And honestly, it's so much more fun to grow these things. It's so much more gratifying to grow these things. Like, you know, here's another little tilakii that I've been growing for quite a while. I mean, probably like four years now. And when I got it, it was a single head, and it slowly but surely started to kind of like, you know, turn into a clump. This thing produces a lot of seeds, so you can kind of see there's a fruit right there. There's another fruit right there, and you know, I'll probably actually collect those fruits today. You have another little butte right here, and I mean, look at this one. You can see we're just a little early, but this thing is getting ready to go off. It's got blooms coming out everywhere, and this is a cactus you can touch, which is great, you know, so you don't have to worry about getting stabbed up while you're repotting it, you know. But absolutely one of my favorite species of plants. I love mammillarias, and as you guys know, mammillaria is for lovers. So this one here, this was actually, oddly enough, this is another Mesa garden plant. I don't actually know whether Steve sowed this one or not. I'm assuming probably because it's pretty old. I'm guessing with the way that they grow things, I'm guessing that he probably did sow this, but I can't be certain. Now, this one's actually in a nice ceramic pot, and this is a Al Van Acker pot. Al and his wife were really, really well-known potters here, and they've inspired a lot of potters, including myself to some degree. And so it's kind of cool to be able to have this little piece of Los Angeles cactus and succulent history, basically. So in terms of care and soil for this thing, like I've got it in a pretty gritty mix. It's about 80-20, and what I mean by that is it's 80% inorganic. So as I mentioned in the last video, inorganic basically just means there's no compost, nothing like that. So it's turfus, pumice, decomposing granite, or DG for short. And actually one of the ingredients in my soil that I did not mention in the last one when I was talking about that Copiapoa is lava or scoria, black or red, doesn't really matter. But it's just a mix of different things. However, with this one, I actually do have a bit more compost than the Copiapoas. And that's just so I don't have to water it as much, because this is not gonna be able to maintain for as long of a period through the summer with no water as the Copiapoas will. I was really nervous when I repotted this because, you know, knowing that it's old, you know, and knowing that it's been around for so long, I was really hoped for the best. You know, I didn't want to have any issues with it, and it's now been in this pot for a couple of years, and it seems to be absolutely loving life. So yeah, this is Mammillaria crucidra, subspecies Tilakii, and it's from Oaxaca, Mexico. So thank you guys so much for watching. By the way, I just wanted to do a huge shout out to all of the new Patreon members. I couldn't be more stoked. Like seeing the email notifications coming in. Thank you guys. Like I'm so excited about what that's gonna mean. Like what kind of things I'm gonna be able to do. Yeah, and I'm just excited about the projects that are coming up. So we've been cleaning the greenhouse today. I got my son here with me. We're getting it straightened up, and you know, getting ready for the filming of the illustrious, elusive greenhouse tour. So thank you guys for watching. You know, if you're able to become a Patreon member, that would be absolutely incredible. You know, the content does take a lot of time, energy, and money to produce. So anything that you could help out with would be absolutely fantastic. And until the next time, you guys, the quest continues. Peace.
Last little shot of this spot at the golden hour. You got the Tilakii in bloom, dangling, just doing its thing. You got Tilakii here, but then you got them growing side by side with Agave Oteroi. And then next to that, you got more Tilakii, Bursera, Pharaoh Cactus, Recurvata, Mammillaria mystax. What the fuck, is that an Echeveria? Oh shit, and an Echeveria! Oh, cool. And the Neobuxbaumia. Everything. All growing right here on this hillside. Oh. It's kind of treacherous, honestly, but let me get down off this shit. Okay. All right. Wow.